What's up, y'all? This is going to be my JJK 262 chapter review, so if you're not caught up, spoilers beware. So as you already know, this was a short chapter, only 7 pages, and we've already talked about some of it in my previous videos, but for the purposes of this, I wanted to re-go over the mechanics and nuance of the domain clash that's happening because I've been getting a lot of questions about that. And in fact, if you're interested in that type of thing, a few months ago, I did a full breakdown in depth of the Gojo Sukuna domain clashes from their original fight. So if you want to check that out, that'll give you like a good base of knowledge to work from, but I will give the short version here in this video as well. And if I remember, I will link that video down in the comments. So let's get started with that. What exactly is happening in these next 3 minutes that is essentially going to decide this battle? All right, so to quickly recap you, in the original Gojo Sukuna domain clashes, they kept changing the parameters of their domains in order to one-up each other, right? And this was primarily coming from Gojo's end because he was the one that needed to figure out a way to level the playing field against Sukuna's open barrier. Because originally, Sukuna with his open barrier had a much larger area of effect, so his domain was able to attack the outside of Gojo's domain, destroying it. So from that point, Gojo tried different things to get around this. Now, what he ultimately came up with was shrinking his domain down to the size of a basketball. Now, why does this help him? Well, an easy way to think about this, in my opinion, is assume you have like just a raw amount of glass. Okay, let's say you have 10 pounds of glass for this example, and I tell you, hey, take that 10 pounds of glass, you're not going to get any more or any less, and make a dome that covers 2 city blocks. You're going to be like, wow, that's almost impossible. But, you'll get your team of scientists on it and you make the glass out of that 10 pounds that is just so thin that you are able to make a dome to cover the 2 city blocks. Well, now imagine just walking up to that thin glass dome and flicking it. It's going to shatter, right? Because it's so thin. Now imagine I say, take that same 10 pounds of glass, no more, no less, and make a basketball out of it. Well, that's going to be much, much tougher to break or shatter, right? Because it's going to be so much more dense. So that's the same idea at play here. Gojo has shrunk down the domain to make it tougher. Now, this didn't completely solve Gojo's problems because even though it was tougher, it was still getting slashed upon from the outside, so it would ultimately break. And they found out that it took 3 minutes for Malevolent Shrine to destroy that version of Unlimited Void. So what Gojo did was put the beatdown on Sukuna within the domain to the extent where Malevolent Shrine collapsed. So the idea is that Gojo needs to do enough damage to Sukuna before 3 minutes are up and his domain is destroyed. So the same thing is what's happening right now between Yuta and Sukuna. They've got these same parameters. He did the basketball size Unlimited Void, and so he has 3 minutes to hurt Sukuna enough to make Malevolent Shrine collapse before his domain is destroyed by Malevolent Shrine. Now, Sukuna, if you recall, has been struggling for like 20 chapters, but he's been keeping it going, right? And the last time we saw him open his domain, we knew he did it because he had hit black flashes that opened a new pathway, and he'd made binding vows so that he could have the domain open for 99 seconds. Well, clearly that's less than 3 minutes, right? So Yuta should win. However, that's not the case because Sukuna, the Binding Vow merchant, has made another change, and he has shrunk his domain down to the size of being just barely bigger than that basketball. So since his Malevolent Shrine is so small, he no longer has that 99-second limit. He can keep it up indefinitely. So we are back once again to this 3-minute gamble, right? Will Sukuna be able to destroy Infinite Void, or will Yuta be able to damage Sukuna enough to destroy Malevolent Shrine? And then I also want to give a brief recap of what domain amplification is because some people have been asking me that. And I do have full videos explaining this, so check it out if you want. But really quickly, the way to think of domain amplification is that it's a barrier technique. And you could imagine it like a barrier that you are placing around your body. Think of it like a spacesuit, like it's form-fitting to you, right? Except you are not imbuing anything into the barrier. It's empty, it's a void. And so what happens is if I punch you with that empty barrier on my fist. When it comes into contact with a curse technique, it's going to try and fill its emptiness with that curse technique. So in the case of Gojo and his Limitless, here you can see Jogo and Hanami using domain amplification. They're using that to bypass the Limitless and be able to hit Gojo, because the Limitless curse technique will flood into their barrier and thus allowing them to bypass it and potentially hit Gojo. So that's what Sukuna has done to Akotsu in the domain expansion. And if you're looking for an example of like why didn't Akotsu know that was possible, yada yada yada, I did talk about that in my previous video, my reaction to 262. So check that out if you're interested. Oh, and the particular nuance there, because I don't think I mentioned it, is you can't use domain amplification and your curse technique at the same time. So that's why Yuta was confused this chapter when Sukuna used it, even though his domain was going using the curse technique, right? And that was possible because the domain was the one responsible for using the curse technique, and Sukuna was using domain amplification. And finally, I just got to talk about this last panel again because it feels so important. Again, we have Yuta, who has been stitched together and healed, and presumably Shoko and the medical team did that just so that Yuta would have the option of potentially coming back and swapping into his old body, assuming everything goes swimmingly with Sukuna, which it's clearly not, right? But I think they would have done that just in case. But it makes so many things possible, right? And here we have Rika fully manifested. That was explicitly stated, and she is weeping, like screaming his name, right? The last time we saw this was in Jujutsu Kaisen 0. So I mentioned this. We don't really know if Rika knows about the Gojo plan or if she doesn't. Because if she doesn't know, then she may think Yuta is like dead right here, right? But even if she does know, she could still just be sad, and maybe this is a flash forward after something happened to Gojo already. Really, none of that is truly relevant. The main point here is that if Rika is worried about Yuta regardless of the circumstances, right? Does Rika have the power to make her own binding vow kind of like the mirror of what Akotsu did in JJK 0? Because if you recall, he was the one in that movie to basically trade his life, profess his love for Rika, and unlock that true power. What if Rika kind of did that for him now? Now, there are a bunch of questions about like, this isn't really the real Rika, so does she have that type of agency? I don't know. Like maybe when she's fully manifested, she is more like the real Rika. I don't know. Maybe it's not important, but assuming she could do something like that, what would happen? Like, what if Rika, again, the most powerful cursed spirit that we've ever seen, literally boundless cursed energy, what kind of binding vow could she make in trade for her life, right? Like, what if, like, I'm just throwing things out right now, but what if Rika doesn't understand that Yuta is in Gojo's body and she thinks he's gone and she trades her life to, like, bring him back? Well, he's already around in Gojo's body. So, like, what would come back? Like, could this be a way Gojo comes back? Is his brain in there right now? Like, he seems to be stitched up. He doesn't have the scar, but that scar is from a binding vow related to Kenjaku's curse technique, so he wouldn't have that scar. So his brain could be in there, or it's just empty right now, right? But if they transplanted Akotsu's brain into Gojo's body, they surely wouldn't have just like thrown Gojo's brain away. Now, maybe it's just like in a Futurama vat or something somewhere, but what if it's in there just like temporarily, right? And Rika made some sort of binding vow to bring back Yuta. Well, since he's back and Gojo's brain is in this body and Gojo's soul has been in this body thanks to the soul swap, could this be a way for him to come back? And I'm really not trying to cope here. I'm just trying to think of interesting possibilities. A darker possibility could be, if that happened, would it bring Kenjaku back? Now, the reason for that could be that, his brain was eaten in order to copy that curse technique. And since we don't know the nuance of that curse technique, could there be something else to it that would maybe be a weird loophole for him to return in the body? And an even third possibility would be the fact that that Sukuna finger was eaten, right? So if somehow they did defeat Sukuna, could he come back in this body? Three kind of just crazy possibilities to, wet your whistle with on this extended lobotomy Kaisen. I don't know. My mind's just been racing, and it's going to continue to race since we got so much time. But let me know y'all's thoughts on that. Anyways, y'all, that's it for this one. Thank you so much for watching. Go follow and support all of these amazing artists that I've been showcasing in this video. And I don't normally say this, but I'm going to just try it to see if there's actually like an actionable difference here. But like, comment, subscribe. Anyways, I'll see y'all in the next one.